I'm Eric Newton, and this is The Together Show. We all know relationships take work, but what is that work, and how do we do it? As a former divorce lawyer, I've watched thousands of couples break up firsthand. Having seen the worst in relationships, I decided to try to help couples stay together. So on this show, we talk to real couples and find out what love really looks like.
But it's very hard to have an argument with Aman where you win. He is really good with words, and he will somehow take things around and take it to a perspective where, like, see, I told you. And you're like, oh, okay, yeah, maybe that's my fault.
Welcome to the show, everybody. Thanks for joining. This is part 2 of the Akriti and Amandeep story. Now, to refresh your memory, on Tuesday, Amandeep and Akriti shared their story of merging the two concepts of arranged marriage and love marriage into their own unique relationship. They also told us about their basic philosophy of bringing love and harmony to conflict situations in their marriage. Today, we'll get to hear how they actually deal with conflict as they tell us about a fight they hadn't quite resolved before coming in to record the show. Now, all couples deal with conflict, of course. The question isn't so much when as it is how. In this episode, these two open up and share the inevitably messy process with us and bring it all the way home to resolution. So with that, let's go to Akriti and Amandeep. We were just about to talk about this fight that you guys had. Now I get that it was a silly topic, which is probably what they all are when you look back at them.
Sometimes they're not.
But what was it? So how did it go?
Whose perspective do you want?
Yes.
Oh, good
That's
point.
A good question.
That is a good point. Let's start with Akriti.
Mine is reality.
Of course
Hey,
it is.
come on. So, okay, to give you a background, we are in the middle of shifting things around in the house.
Yeah.
And there are certain things that both of us agreed on that, we're going to get rid of and get something new. So there was a coffee table, side tables, and a study desk. And I put an ad on Craigslist. I got someone who was very, very, very interested, and he said, can I come on Saturday or can I come on Sunday morning to come and pick it up? And I texted Aman and said, here's somebody who's interested. Are you going to be home? Because I was not. And so in the middle of that conversation, when I'm just about to confirm to that person what time, Aman messages me and says, I'm thinking of keeping the side tables. What if it just send the coffee tables? And it just threw me off. And
Because they were already coming.
They were already coming. And it was like we agreed on, that we're going to get rid of all of these. And I just got a little ticked off. And I said, what is wrong with you? We agreed on getting rid of these tables, and now you're suddenly changing your mind. And what do you think I'm going to do? I'm not going to text this person. And he messaged saying, I was just making a suggestion.
Yeah.
And in that whole context, I personally got a little more ticked off. I got irritated, and I said, this is stupid, and I'm not selling this. You do this now. And I kind of told him, I'm done. You want to sell the coffee table and the side tables, you do it. I'm out of it.
So he made the suggestion, well, hey, what if we kept this component, the what was it?
The side table.
The side tables?
Side table.
And then that triggered something for you deep enough that you reacted pretty strongly.
Yes. So I'll give you a slight background to that as well. Aman, as a person,
Yeah.
he's very indecisive. It's very hard for him to take a decision and stick to it, saying, yes, this is it.
Yeah.
Like I'm an optimization junkie.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Analysis paralysis. That's him.
I'll analyze things to death such that the most optimal solution needs to be in front of me before I do something.
Which can be a great strength when in those situations where it's useful.
Yes.
Yeah.
And can just slow you the heck down when it's not
Absolutely.
useful.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So
So that's the background.
That's the background. So
Yeah.
looking back now, that aspect triggered off because I'm not like that. I'm like, okay, if we take that decision and let's see through it.
Yeah.
And fine, it might not be the perfect decision, but you learn from your failures, or you learn
you
from
were
mistakes.
in action at least. Yeah,
Exactly.
okay.
You've taken that decision, you move on. And looking back, this aspect frustrates me a lot. And,
Yeah.
with the
Use
coffee.
that at play again.
That
yeah.
played, yeah.
Yeah,
So when
yeah.
that conversation happened regarding the coffee table,
That's why you got triggered.
that's what I got triggered. I'm like, oh my God, again,
Right,
he's
right.
taking this whole thing to, how
then,
about this?
And then he felt defensive because you came at him with an energy that he wasn't expecting. So he got defensive in his like you
and
defended
and
yourself.
my way of defending is not
Is
you
to
know,
get
I don't-
rational.
I don't defend. That's not what I do.
Uh-huh.
I get offensive.
But it sounded like you got rational at this one. You
Well,
were,
so
you know-
the way I deal with these difficult moments is applying logic and being rational such that I slice and dice the problem into 15 different pieces and I'll just completely disarm you. And I'll go to war on one of those components or two of those components or something like that.
So you were gearing up for that.
Yeah, so I basically I'll just break it down.
Yeah.
I'll break it down and then just attack it. Right?
Okay.
And I'm good with words.
Yeah.
Oh,
So given that I'm good with words, you're likely not going to be able to fight it out
it's
with me.
Yeah.
very hard to have I would say conversation. Obviously, conversation gets you somewhere, but it's very hard to have an argument with Aman where you win,
Right.
even if you're right.
Right.
He is really good with words, and he will somehow take things around and take it to a perspective where, like, see, I told you, and you're like, oh, okay, yeah, maybe that's my fault. When it's not your fault at all. So, and I get this now. Obviously, I'm married to him, and I tell him, I said, look, I don't want to have this conversation because I'm not going to win it,
Yeah.
and there's
Yeah.
no point.
Yeah.
I am practicing for sure, and I am getting to a point where I'm like, okay, you have a point. I have a point to up you at, and let's talk more.
So did it escalate further?
No, it
So it
didn't.
kinda
It
went there?
lasted longer than we would have liked it to.
Yes,
So it didn't escalate so much more. It just kind of felt drawn out.
Yeah.
it did. It
Absolutely.
did.
And now, like we resolved it this morning, and the way we resolved it was she said sorry, I said sorry. It's like, it's kind of useless to fight over it. Who the hell cares about a side table? Let it go or
Yeah.
let it stay. Like,
It doesn't matter.
it doesn't matter. It's
It-
like, it's a side table.
What I'm really curious about in the whole human experience and in couples relationships or romantic relationships specifically is why we care so much in the moment when we care. That we have the fight reaction that we do,
Yeah.
or the anger reaction, or that internal feeling. Like, why do you care so? Why?
Care about
Shit,
so
but what
caring
I'm
about your argument.
yeah, you're caring about your argument. You get triggered.
Yeah.
You feel sensitivity.
Right.
And
yeah.
what is the root of that is the question that I have for you guys. When you were feeling that, when you first felt that sensitivity in Akriti, what was the root of it? Why?
That's a good question.
You never talked
I
about
would
it?
say it. So with this particular fight or argument, I felt more of the frustration of his indecisiveness.
Uh-huh.
And the root cause, I guess, was that, okay, personally, it was more of a, frustration or irritation of that here is something that we're doing that is away from what the normal is of him doing analysis paralysis, or, me not taking a decision. And at that point of time, I felt unheard. Like, I felt that what I wanted was not heard by him. And it was a decision that we took together, and out of love and respect, go with it, rather than coming back and saying, let's do this. And
So, okay, so I heard three things. One was that analysis paralysis is not okay for some reason. I'm curious what the reason is behind why analysis paralysis matters at all. I also heard he's not hearing me,
yeah.
and that's not okay for some
That's-
reason,
yeah.
which I also want to know, why does it matter? And the third one was, if he loved and respected me, he would just go with it. And I wonder why those two are attached to each other.
That's interesting. Even I want to know.
Hey, come on.
And then I'm gonna do the same thing for you. So Or maybe which one was the most important of those? The one that really was getting your...
I think being not heard.
Yeah.
That was the most important.
And why does that matter?
Where we come from, and we have really worked on our relationship from where we were to where we are now. And I know that so many times when we have rackets with each other, when we fight, it's mostly your personal story that you have of that person, of that perception of that person. And at that point of time, of course, the circumstances matter a lot. I was at work. I had deadlines to do, and there was a lot of stress going on. And here I have something that I can fall back on, saying, yes, this is something that's taken care of, and a decision that's done. Let's move on. Like, I don't want to waste my time on this.
Yeah.
And he, with that particular conversation about a suggestion, it was I think a lot of things played a role in there. I was at work. We were texting each other. It wasn't a face-to-face conversation. It wasn't a conversation when after dinner you're sitting on the couch to have a conversation. That's when you say, okay, hey, I was thinking, how about this? And all that combined, it just took off. And I'm like, he's not hearing me. We've taken that decision. Let's just move on.
Yeah, it's like it was a threat to the scarcity of your time and the sanctity of your connection in a way.
Yes. And that's the last night we tried to resolve it, and it didn't, because that's the point I brought up. I said, and I've just started work. I started work almost a month ago, and before that I wasn't working. I was I was at home. I just finished my graduation. I did my MBA, and that was like, it was a full-time course, but I was working from home a lot.
Yeah.
And at that point in time, he could ask me to do things, and I could do it because I had the time in my on my side. But now I do not, and that played a role too. I'm like. And that's what we discussed last night when, the point I brought up to win the fight was, I'm working too now, and I can't do everything you tell me to do. And it just went on this rant.
Yeah.
So it was all that story in my head that here I am, I'm working as well, and I don't have equal time. And, he's asking me to do
an extra thing. It's like disrespectful to your time.
Yeah,
and you're an important person too.
Exactly. And I'm doing it, in office hours, and, he doesn't respect my time. And it's just in my head, how your imagination, you take it to every level possible.
Well, what's fascinating to me when these things come up is how rooted they are in so many other issues.
Yep.
And it's like, and then to this morning you just said, I don't care about a coffee table. And that sounds to me like a decoupling of the issues from one another. Before you had it that he was saying a thing and it meant all this other stuff. And then it sounds like this morning you decided that his saying that thing doesn't mean all that other stuff. Yeah. Am I making too much of it, or is that about right?
It's absolutely right. I went in today and I was, walking the dogs, and I was thinking like, okay, he's home, and just recalling the fight, and it's exactly what you said. I'm in my head, I'm like, we just had a conversation about a coffee table.
Yeah.
He just made one suggestion, and I, in my head made this whole story about it and got so many other factors that they're trivial.
Yeah.
They don't even, they're not even connected.
Well, they're relevant. All of them are important.
On
sure.
its own, yes.
On their as their own
as their own
yeah.
entity. They don't have to bring. We used to at point. The moment we used to have an argument, you're like, okay, this is the perfect opportunity to get other things in. Like, you did this 10 months ago, or like 2 months ago, and you're like, hey, excuse me, don't say that. There were times when he would, when we would have an argument, he like, you always, and I would stop him there and then and said, excuse me, let's talk about today. Yeah. Why are we fighting for this particular thing? Yeah. Don't bring the past up, and don't say always.
Yeah. Aubrey my girlfriend nailed me on that word too. Yeah. Aubrey's always in fights don't it's the worst possible combo.
That's the worst thing you can do.
I realize that.
It doesn't work. And the moment he says always, I stop him. I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm not going to have this. I'm not going to, pursue this conversation till you you talk about today, or whatever the relevant episode is. Let's
Yeah.
talk about that and resolve
Yeah.
that. Always is not the right way to go ahead.
Yeah.
You don't resolve it then.
So now, Aman, on your part, you were also pretty upset. What was your frustration triggered by?
There's a couple of different conversations going on in my head, right? Like I said, I'm an optimization junkie, and one of the things that came up was, how can we do this with minimum cost, right? So not replacing one component means cost goes down,
Yeah.
for example, right?
Yeah.
And I said, well, I just suggested this thing. I'm not saying that that's how it needs to be. I said, what if we did it this way?
Yeah.
My frustration was, why would you not even consider it? What's wrong with considering that?
Yeah.
Right? And when she reacted to me saying that this is out integrity, you can't do this, I'm like, of course I can do this.
Yeah.
What makes you say that I can't do this? And this is our thing that we're giving away for free. I just choose not to give 1/3 of the things for free.
Yeah.
What's wrong with that?
Okay, I'm curious about something.
Sure.
Do you have it that one of the reasons she loves you is that because you're very good at stuff, and one of the things that you're very good at is optimization, and so it's sort of like a root? Is being talented at optimization at the root of what makes you valuable?
To her, I don't think so. I don't think I connect her love for me to that ability of mine. I do think that ability of mine is an asset in a lot of cases for me, but I don't think it is.
It's not
in
connected
this
for her?
relationship. Not in this
Does
relationship.
it matter to you that it is or isn't connected for her? Do you wish it was? Do you wish that she acknowledged it more, perhaps?
I don't think so. Because she I think she's present to that fundamental way of thinking for me, and she lets me do it.
She lets you do it.
Right? She doesn't fight it. Sometimes she just tells me, "You're probably spending more time on that than is warranted." Right? I was like, "Yeah, good point. Like that's $50 worth of thing."
So but do you know why I asked the question? I asked the question
sure.
because that bowstring is tight enough that when she twanged it, boing, it made this noise. It made it was energized for you.
That's interesting. I don't think I've looked into that.
Because she did, right? That was the bowstring that got twanged.
Yeah.
Was
I guess I'll have to go look into it. I don't know.
That's a great question, by the way.
my immediate thought is that I don't think that like me being an optimization junkie and Akriti loving me are related, or me looking for any more acknowledgement on that. I don't think I'm looking for any more acknowledgement on that. But you bring up a good point. I'll have to go think about this.
Well, if it's not that point, I mean, I don't want to force it, but I am curious why you had an emotional reaction to, I mean, because you described it to me logically. I get the logic of wanting to optimize, sure, but that's not enough to make you really care.
So my emotional reaction was not to her not listening to, or actually, let me not say it that way, because what I'm going to say next will clarify this. My emotional reaction was not to that thought being not listened to at that moment, right? That let's optimize this a little further. I don't think my emotional reaction was to that. My emotional reaction was, I'm saying something. Why don't you listen to it?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Is that a respect? Like it's not respectful? Is that a respect thing?
I don't think it's a respect thing. I think it's a listen thing. It's like, why are you not listening to what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Why aren't you getting what I'm saying? How hard is it to get this?
Which is so funny that that's the issue.
Right?
Because it was the same one she had.
Yeah, exactly. So and now that you asked me this question, I'm thinking about what was the underlying current? Because when I said what I said, which is, what if you keep this? And she said, no, that's out integrity. And I said, that's not out integrity. And she says, no, that is out integrity. I said, what the hell?
Yeah.
That is not out integrity. Like, that's my choice. Why would you not? So I think it was more, at least listen to what I'm saying.
Why does it matter if she listens? I mean, I think it does, but why?
And also, was it listen to me and agree with me, rather than just listen to me.
No, I don't think it was the agree with me thing. Had we talked about it and said, no, here's why this is a good idea, or here's why this is a bad idea.
Yeah.
I think that would have just fizzled out within the next 2 message exchanges. But the fact that the conversation did not happen and you just completely shut it was where I said, no, that's not going to work.
Oh, yes. When, yes.
I think that's what happened.
I get
that's
it.
what happened.
Yeah, that feeling of being just shut down.
It's like,
yeah.
all I said was, let's keep the side table.
Yeah, and
right?
then you feel defensive about it, and then you get rational, but really it was
Right,
just
it's
like, shut me down.
So now I can see that. Now that's what happened. So if you shut me down, I will find a way to break through that. Right?
To open it up.
I will
See
absolutely
what I'm living with?
I will
How hard
absolutely
it
find
is?
You're living with me is what you're living with.
Yeah. I will absolutely find a way to
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I did so then I went into a conversation of why that's not out integrity, why you should consider this, why you're overthinking this, why you're not thinking about the right things, and go to a point where I'll just diffuse your argument entirely.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I ended up doing there.
With Aubrey, when she comes at me with something with more anger than I think is warranted for the exchange,
Yeah.
or her reaction is just bigger than I expect it to be, and I feel shut down, I have a really strong reaction. It's like, to me, it's like being shut down is something that real men don't do. You know, and that's I don't even want to say it out loud because it's so embarrassing to say that right now. But it's like real men don't get shut down.
Right.
And if she can shut me down, then I'm a henpecked, sad sap kind of guy. And so, but I've been trying to wonder lately, why do I care about that even?
Yeah.
Like I'm always going to the next level down. Why do I care about that and then
Right.
that? Why do I care if she shuts me down? Actually, why do you care?
I don't think that has got anything to do with her. I think that's just that'll be with anybody and everybody.
Yeah, it's
shutting
in
down.
it's in you and it's in me.
Yeah, exactly.
But so what? I mean, does it matter? We're still going to have food on the table and friends to talk to and sunny days. I mean, why do we actually care?
Yeah, that's a good question actually. So this morning, no, I don't have the answer to it, by the way. So it's sort of it's an inquiry for me as well. This morning when she came up and said, "I'm sorry, we fought," in that moment it did not matter, and I just completely gave up the entire thing, right there and then, such that to the degree that if you were to ask me in that moment, I said, probably never even happened.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Just completely gave it up. But over the last couple of days, I've been inquiring into that is it a function of what I want the world around me to look like and be like and function like to a fairly detailed sort of in a specific way. It should look a certain way, right? That she should behave a certain way. People should react a certain way. I think there's a little bit of that going on.
Shoulds.
Yeah, there's a little bit of shoulds. There's a little bit of idealism. There's a little bit of, it's not sort of directional that we're going to redo the house and we want roughly this much more space and we want roughly this functionality and we want to do it in roughly this much cost.
Yeah.
That's a little more amorphous and you can play around with it. And the way I look at things, I think what's going on is where I say, well, this needs to be here, this needs to be here, this needs to be here, and you've got to spend about $45 on this. Not 46, a maximum of 45.
Yeah.
Right? So it's very specific. And so there's not much room to play with in any of those things.
Yeah.
And I think it's not just with this house story. This goes beyond just this one incident.
Yeah.
Right?
Of course.
This goes into my work. This goes into other aspects of the relationship. This goes into just other things that I do. It's like things are fairly specific. So I set it up in a manner in my head that there's not much room for error or room to play. And therefore, I end up actually setting myself up for disappointment very, very often.
Yeah.
Because things oftentimes don't turn out that way.
Yeah. And you've got it very tight.
Right. So, and then I want to control. So that's what happens when I have a very tight idea of what it needs to look like,
Yeah.
then I need to control it to every degree.
Which is how we get safety, right?
Exactly.
As humans.
Exactly. Safety, certainty. Because if I am doing that entire thing and making sure that this is how it happens, then I can guarantee that result.
Yeah.
Right? Because there's no room to play, and I can't trust you
Yeah.
to do exactly what I would do.
Right. So okay, safety. I'm glad you went there. So we interviewed a couple recently who've been together a long time, and they have this wellspring of trust with one another that's bigger than I've seen, and it causes them to within the circle of the relationship, when something comes up, they have an ability to let it go kind of before it even fires. An issue comes up, one person does something the other one might not like. They just assume it was for the right reasons and that it was good. Now, it's outside of, they're not perfect, but outside of the relationship, they still have boundaries and, limits and structure, because that's how we get safety and set up the world and make sure that we're okay. And they do that, and they still have upsets with people and whatever. But within the relationship, for some reason, they've got this immense amount of trust. I think it's trust that allows them to just let it go so fast. Whatever issue comes up, I mean, it's like instantaneous. And I think it's trust. So the reason I'm asking you this or bringing it up is, how do you guys develop trust in your relationship? How do you have a structure for working on it and growing it?
I don't think we've specifically attacked that
Yeah, I don't think we've defined it as trust per se.
So I'm actually just guessing with this other couple that it's trust. But if you could imagine a relationship in which couples were able to let the issues go super fast,
Yeah.
what would be the reason that was possible? Because it does happen sometimes. So what's the element?
Communication. Yeah, I was going to say the same
Hands
thing.
down, communication.
Open
Don't
communication.
withhold.
Yes.
Don't withhold it.
What does that mean?
Well, for me per se, it's more if there's something bothering me
Yeah.
about anything that he said or did, or, I just say it. I say that, hey, it's troubling me, or, this is not something that I'm okay with, or this is not something that I want. It's better to...
Even if it's a really scary one?
Even if it's a really scary
I
one.
think that's when you absolutely need to do
That's
it.
when
difficult conversations.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
That's...
So I would attribute our relationship to difficult conversations,
Yeah.
because we've had those.
That's fascinating too.
And we have them all the time.
Yeah.
The moment, so I think just to sort of complete what you were saying was withholding something that, if you consider something difficult or scary or, something that threatens you or something like that, it's clearly important to you,
Yeah.
right? Because if it wasn't, you wouldn't care about it.
Right. Yeah.
And if you do not address what's important to you with the other person, and you withhold it, it's not going to go away.
Right.
It's likely going to be in the head, and then it'll morph into something else, and it'll morph into something else, and you'll create some other story about it, and then you'll create some third story about it.
Yeah.
And then it ends up becoming something that it really is not. And
Yeah.
it shows up in a different manner, right? Her way of doing that
Good
is...
map.
Her way of doing that, her way of dealing with something like that is get passive-aggressive. Right? So she'll stop talking
Is
about
that true?
that.
Yeah.
She'll stop
Okay.
talking about that, but then she'll do things to sort of vent that energy in other ways, right? My way of dealing with that is just get super aggressive and like, we need to do X.
Is
and
that
you
true,
don't
too?
do
Yes.
Y.
Oh, yes.
Like, you don't do this, you don't do that. But the fundamental undercurrent is a completely different thing,
Right.
right? The moment we started to have these conversations, the moment we realized, and this wasn't that we came to the realization on our own, right? There was a lot of support from different kinds of people at different points in time that noticed the dynamics and said, well, you guys kind of need to talk about this.
Yeah.
Right? Like there's something around there going on that you might want to talk about, right? People we trust.
Right.
And so we had some of these conversations. We actually got to the root of a couple of those hard ones. And when we got to the root of that, we realized that the moment we diffused it, everything else vanished around it. I was like, oh, we kind of need to do this a little more
Yeah.
often, right? I mean, we should not be withholding stuff. So
Right.
that's how we.
Which is
that's-
hard.
It is. I was just going to say, it's not
Right?
easy. It's
What are the
not
hardest
easy.
ones to bring up? I would imagine it's those that seem like they would be a critical threat to the relationship.
Well, there was one about children that in the I'll give you the background before I bring the topic up. In the Indian setup, you don't really have the conversation of children. You know, it's an
You
assumption.
just had children.
Right.
You just have children.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like God's will. You'll have children. So
It's God's gift.
It's the God's gift. Yes, and we never had that conversation. The conversation was more in like going with the flow, where he was like, "Oh yeah, when it's time, we'll have kids," and there wasn't a really serious conversation, and
Yeah.
it affected me, and I didn't realize it how much it affected me till when certain arguments or certain discussions and working on our relationship, that point came up, and that's when I said, okay, we need to have this conversation, and that was one of the difficult conversations for me, because I want kids, and he is at a stage where he's not even sure if he wants kids, and coming to a point where both of us know where we both are, and then deciding or taking a decision as to where we want to be.
Yeah.
So surprisingly, I think we are at a stage where he's comfortable with kids, and he talks about having children, and I'm at a stage where I tell him, I'm like, I'm okay not having kids, if it's what both of us agree on.
Right.
And as long as we both are on the same plane. I don't want to have a child, and you're like, I never wanted a kid, and now you deal with it, or it can affect the relationship.
Yeah.
So that was a difficult conversation.
Actually, interestingly, that was not so difficult. Engaging in that conversation was not so hard for me.
It was hard
It's
for
harder
me.
for you.
It was hard for me because it's something
just-
sensitive. Like
yeah.
I love kids,
Clearly, that's more important.
and I want
a
kids,
conversation,
and I
yeah.
want to have my own children.
So the reason it was sensitive is because his response
Yes.
could mean something fundamental about
Yeah,
the two of you.
yeah.
right.
And it was sensitive because there could have been a conclusion where we decide that we're not going to have children.
Yeah.
And I have to take the responsibility of, I know that to be in this relationship, I have made that decision.
Yeah.
And I made that decision consciously after having a full one-on-one conversation with him.
My guess is that these conversations are the process of developing trust for the two of you.
Absolutely.
We're closing in on our time here, so I want to jump to a new question, but to put the period on this sentence, from my perspective, what a powerful process you two have. I mean, that is such a strong commitment to talk, even when you don't want to, even when it's scary, even when it could actually threaten the two of you to talk about a thing. You talk about it anyway.
And sometimes we're not able to do it by ourselves.
Right. And that's when
And-
you bring in...
We say, you know what, we kind of need to address this, and we need some support, and let's go figure out what support we need.
Right.
Right. So,
Right.
we haven't had any marriage counseling or anything of that sort, but we're not opposed to the idea.
Yeah.
I'd much rather we invest time and effort in that
Right.
than deal with some communication that we withheld that bubbles up in a different manner.
Yeah.
And that disrupts the relationship.
Right. Yeah, because
Right.
it will bubble up.
Oh, yeah.
At some point in time.
Yeah.
If it's important to you, it will
Yeah.
bubble up. If it's not, you probably don't care about it anyway.
Yeah. Briefly, Akriti, what would you say about recovery from disagreements and hurt feelings? What's your mechanism for healing the relationship when those things happen?
Communication. Again.
It's again communication.
It's it's really important to be open as to what you're thinking
Yeah.
and what you're feeling. And it's not only, it's not only negative. Like, you don't have to say that, oh, I was hurt by this, or I didn't, I was affected by this, but it's also acknowledging that
Yeah.
I love you, or I love that you did this. And,
Yeah.
just making sure that you recognize the positive of the person, of your spouse, and not only, focus on the negative.
Right.
That yes, he has analysis paralysis, but on the other hand, he does love me, and he does, do things that surprise me and makes me love him even more.
Yeah.
And I make sure that I let him know that.
Yeah.
So that balance helps in recovery very well.
Right.
So even today, when I came to him and I said, I'm sorry, the sorry did not just end, okay, I'm sorry, let's move on, but I'm sorry. And we hugged and, we said, I love you. And, we hate fighting. And then we made a pact that, okay, maybe we should just fight once in 3 weeks on random things to get that part out.
Yeah, we've got to question this. That is it just like this monthly thing
Yeah.
that needs to happen? So maybe it is. I don't know that, but you know what? Let's just watch this.
I was just talking to a couple the other day that has the perspective that that energy is just there.
Yeah.
And how do we deal with it? They decided to wrestle.
Interesting.
So they wrestle, I think every day now. And the challenge that at first was, given that one guy, there's a guy, it's a man and a woman, so there's a power difference physically.
Sure.
How do you wrestle in a way that allows the aggression to come out but doesn't feel like being dominated? And they've worked out this methodology, and they do it.
Oh,
They say the fights don't happen like they used to because they get that aggression out in wrestling.
That's interesting.
Maybe we should do that, but not wrestling. You're clearly
that's not gonna work.
that's not going to work. But maybe something.
No energy is going to come out.
Video games.
Yeah, video games.
Video games.
I
think you started there. Well, guys, it's been an immense pleasure. Such a fun interview. I wish we had more time because I've got a million more questions, but maybe we'll bring you back in some period of time.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, so I almost forgot to do this, and but I'm not letting you guys out of the studio until we do a quick this or that game
Okay.
to close out the day. So basically, here's how it's going to work. I'm going to say a this or that, and then I'm going to point to one of you, and you'll answer it, and then the other one will answer it.
Okay.
So we'll just do a few of these.
Okay.
Okay, we'll start it off easy. Pirates or ninjas?
Pirates.
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 Of course.
Of course. Pirates are just cool. iOS or Android?
iOS.
iOS.
Yeah, you're in San Francisco. I guess that was an easy. Let's see. Mind Reader or Superman?
Mind Reader.
Superman.
Really?
Yeah.
Why Superman?
I don't want everybody. I'm not mind reader.
You don't want to know what people are
I
thinking?
don't want to know. Let it be a surprise.
God,
It's
that's
always,
what I want to know, what people are thinking all the
time. Phone call or text?
Text.
Phone call.
Really?
Yes. Text
Deeper,
is so
richer.
impersonal.
Yeah. But
I
it's so
don't-
quick and efficient. It's optimized.
Exactly. It's like least effort.
Yeah, but it's like you're hiding behind a filter.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, last one.
All right.
Live forever or die in the next 5 minutes?
Live forever.
Ooh, that's a hard one.
It is a hard one.
Forever is forever. 5 minutes is short.
No, forever. I'll go forever.
Forever. All right. Guys, that was awesome.
Thank
Thanks
you.
a lot.
Thanks.
Well, that's it for the Akriti and Amandeep show, folks. Thanks for tuning in. If you liked the show, please subscribe to us on iTunes. It makes a big difference when you do that. If you have any questions or comments, or if you'd like to be on the show, please reach out to us via one of our social platforms. You can find our website at www.together.guide. Our Facebook page is Facebook/TogetherShow. Twitter and Instagram are both Together_show, or you can email me at host@together.guide. Our producer is Charlene Goto. Our web designer is Courtney Munna. Our art director, and my one and only, is Aubrey Pick. I can't wait till she gets home so I can snuggle her. Thanks once again to my guests, Akriti and Amandeep. Guys, I'm not kidding about India. And be sure to tune in for next Tuesday's episode, in which you will hear...
One of the things that Alexis taught me is that relationships aren't business. Meaning sometimes you just have to go with the emotion instead of like breaking down everything and being like, okay, I understand your problem. Let's look for a solution.
That's all for today, folks. See you next time.